one of the things we have here in the United States is this idea of the American dream. Now, we all have it in one way or another. It brings hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people to our country every year. This idea that if I start with nothing, I could somehow still make something, in fact, make great things. The idea that we could go from rags to riches. Our society, our culture is just full of those stories. You can look at the newspaper probably any day of the week and you're going to find the story about some CEO at a great company who was the first one to graduate from college from his family and started out as, sweeping the floors of the warehouse, and now he's the CEO and president of the company. Yeah, we want that. I like success. I like to not have to worry about things in life. I like to have all that good stuff. There's another set of stories, though. The Bible holds up another model. There's a great story in the Bible that isn't rags to riches, but it's really riches to rags. This guy named Moses, chances are you've heard of Moses. Moses, one of the early founders and base characters in the Jewish faith and now our Christian faith as well. And Moses, interesting guy. He grew up in Egypt. You see, Joseph had gone to Egypt and then brought all his brothers there to escape a famine. And over hundreds of years, they grew up to be a great people and were, I don't know if outnumbering the Egyptians, but were strong and large people. And the Egyptians started getting really worried and nervous about all these Hebrew people that were among them. And they no longer remembered Joseph anymore. It had been hundreds of years. And so they decided they needed to do something about it. So they enslaved all the Hebrew people to keep them under control. And it wasn't working. They were too strong of people. So then they decided, well, we can't let any more men be born into these people. So they made laws that any male baby would have to be thrown into the Nile River. And, thinking that that's going to control their population. Well, one baby was born. We don't know the name of the mother or the father. In fact, we don't even know the baby's name at this time. But this mother didn't want her baby to be killed, and she did have a boy. And so for a month, I suppose she had hidden the pregnancy, and for a month after the baby was born, she keeps him hidden away in the house and so on. But I suppose after about 30 days, the baby's lungs are getting strong enough that it's hard to hide the noise from the Egyptian neighbors, and someone's going to, tell them out, hey, there's a baby boy over here. Someone's got to do something about it. So she's desperate. She has to do something. So she develops a plan. I don't know what kind of plan. It sounds like a crazy plan to me, but she puts him in a basket and hides him on the bulrushes of the Nile River. Like, what, that's going to work? But maybe she was really being pretty smart. Maybe she knew that this is where the Pharaoh's daughter comes to bathe every day, because the Pharaoh's daughter did come to bathe that day with her maidservants, and they get down to the water, and she sees this basket off in the reeds, and they go bring it, and she sees, it's one of the little Hebrew babies, and so cute, he's crying, wants to comfort it, and so she says to one of her, her attendants, go find one of the Hebrew mothers that can nurse it for me. And so they run off to find someone, and sure enough, the big sister of the baby is waiting there. And they say, hey, can you find someone that can nurse this baby? And so she gets her mother, which is actually the baby of the mother. And that child is Moses. In fact, that's what the Pharaoh's daughter names him, says, I will call you Moshe, which is the Hebrew for Moses, because you were Mashah. I pulled you out of the river. And so we have this child. So anyway, you have this child with now being raised in probably the wealthiest family in the entire world at that point in history, raised in the Pharaoh's household of Egypt. I mean, could you ask for more? The definition of success. I mean, the mom was worried about her baby surviving, and now he is at the very top of the heap. I mean, what a perfect setup. I mean, if you need a Hebrew child in power someplace, he's there. Isn't this what you're looking for? Aren't you looking for that kind of success? But like most success stories, all these wonderful, happy stories, the Bible has a tendency to not leave it there and to take it somewhere else. And that is what happens. Moses grows up, I suppose, knowing that he's not Egyptian. He can tell he's Hebrew, and I'm sure he looked like a Hebrew person, not an Egyptian person, even if he's wearing the other clothing. And one day, he's out and he young man, I suppose. We don't really know how old he was. He sees an Egyptian supervisor, someone who's supposed to be looking after all the Hebrew slaves, mistreating them. And he gets so angry about it, he hits that Egyptian and kills him. And he checks around, makes sure no one is looking. He thinks no one's looking, so he buries the body in the sand and thinks, okay, I did my little bit of justice here and I got away with it. But no, sooner the next day he comes out and sees some of his own Hebrew people arguing, and he tries to settle a dispute. And he says, what are you going to do? Kill us like you killed that Egyptian yesterday? And he realizes he's been found out, and it isn't long until he finds out that the Pharaoh knows, and they're going to kill him for what he had done. So he has to run. He has to run. All those riches down to rags, out into the wilderness. And he ends up finding some nomadic people out there and ending up being a shepherd, not a great profession. Sheep owners might have been okay, shepherds were nobodies. And that's what he does. So I started thinking about my life. I don't have those kinds of riches. I haven't ever managed that kind of success. But the little pieces that I put together, that I stacked up, that I piled up to try to make into something, I'd rather not have them taken away. But for some reason, and it seemed like this success, this gift that Moses was in being in the Pharaoh's household was anything that any strategist for these Hebrew people who need to escape from slavery would want, all gets dismantled. I don't know. Do I want to go from riches to rags in whatever I've got? But I guess what we keep finding out is that God isn't so interested in the riches. God isn't so interested in the success that we found or that we built or we happened into. God has other plans. And we start finding out about them at the same time as Moses is off in the wilderness of Midian, looking after Jethro's flocks, that we hear God saying, I have heard the cries of my people. I've heard the cries of my people. Three kind of big things are, I've heard them. God's listening. My people, not just someone, but my people. And therefore God says, I will deliver them from their slavery in Egypt. God cares. God's listening, paying attention. God has an investment in we're God's people, and God wants to do something about it. You know, I don't know that it's a bad thing to be successful. I don't know that creating these towers or building empires is a bad thing. I mean, sure, this Pharaoh did some bad things, but the Bible doesn't seem to think that being a Pharaoh is bad. It doesn't seem to think that Moses being in that family was a bad thing, but God had other plans, and they had to do with God caring about these people. God's basic message just seems to be, I love you. I love you, Moses. I love my people, Israel. Those people who are going to wrestle with God for the rest of their lives. I love you, and I care about you, and I want to do something about it. And that's what I'm after. I'm not after trying to make you successful. I'm not after trying to make you rich. I'm after making you matter. It's not like Moses had a insignificant job or position. I mean, he becomes one of the great leaders of all time. He's taken 1 million people, the Bible tells us, which is probably a bit of a figurative number. I don't know that there's ever a gathering of 1 million people 3,000 years ago through a wilderness to a promised land, a wilderness journey that lasts 40 years. And 40 years is figurative too, whether it's little or not, it certainly is figurative. 4 being the cardinal numbers, north, south, east, west, multiplied times 10 just means totality. This is as long of an experience as you can imagine. It completes and fulfills all things. This was the journey of a lifetime, the journey of a people to recreate a history. And this is the leadership, this is the role that Moses has for these people. You're on a journey too. Your own 40-year journey, the journey of a lifetime that pulls together everything that you ever were, ever are, the totality of your life, your experience, the places you've been, the people you know, the influence you've had. And God wants it to take you somewhere, to a promised land, not necessarily heaven. It's not what it's all about. It's not getting there. It's about having your life matter. God took Moses at the end of his life up to the top of a mountain so that he could see. He said, Moses, you're not going to get where you ultimately are going. You're not going to see the people make it, but I want you to get a glimpse of the promise. I want you to know the meaning and the purpose behind what it is that we've been about for all these years. We need those times too. I hope every once in a while in our lives we're able to sit back and with the eye of God look at our lives and look at what we've been creating, looking at the success that may have passed us by or that we have maybe passed by or that was taken away from us, and see the significance of how God has used us. 1 million people for 40 years, I don't know. But what difference did you make in one person's life yesterday? What bit of hope can you hold up for the person who needs it today? How can you be someone who extends the healing touch of Jesus to someone tomorrow? That's what matters. That's what God cares about. That's what God wants to build up in your life. That's what God wants to build up in my life too. That's how God used Moses. And that wasn't a rags to riches story. It was a riches to rags story. But it was also a story out of survival through success to find a life that mattered, a life that was significant. I don't know if I can find that. It's not bad stuff.